Sometimes our code becomes too much harder to read if we use something like that. That means this if and else if and else if. This whole nested things actually making our code a little bit difficult to read. And we can actually avoid if else with another structure, which is a switch statement. And we can actually do the same solution for this or whatever we wanted, like to print the status based on this temperature. We can actually do that using the switch statements instead of else and else if. So whenever you see that you have a long if and else if block and chain of else if, and it becomes very easy, difficult to understand or read this code, then you can actually switch back to the switch statement, and it's very easy to implement. Let me just provide the switch statement instead of this if else block, and I'm not removing these lines because I need to copy few things. Okay, so if we want the same output with the switch statement, all you have to do is just type switch, and then you have to provide the variable or the data that you want to compare or observe, and then you have to provide a body of this switch statements or block, and now you have to provide some cases. So the first case will be we are actually compare this temp value whether it is less than 10 or not. So just use less than 10, and also you need to provide as a colon, and then you have to print from here. That means if this temperature is less than 10, so if this is the case, then print very cold. So after this case, you have to provide a break keyword to break from this switch statement. Otherwise, it will keep switching to other cases and the result can be ambiguous. So you need to provide this break, and here this break is equivalent to else if. Okay, so now let me copy this case and break, and let me just paste it over here once, and second time we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 conditions to check. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now let me provide the other conditions. That means that should be greater than equals 10 and less than equals maybe 18, and that should print simply cold. And the next condition should be that could be greater than or equals that means 19. Okay, so greater than equals 19 and less than equals 24, and then it should say normal. So you see, it's very easy to implement, and it's a nice looking structure than this if else block. Okay, so now let me provide another condition that will be greater than equals 25, and it will be less than equals 30, and it should print hot, and anything that and the value, if it doesn't match with any of the cases over here, then we can actually provide a default, and this will actually work as the last else block. So default, and simply will print very hot from here. Okay, so now if I run this, let me just remove this if block from here, and just let me cut this, and now if I run this application, as the value is 3.4, it should print very cold. And if I run this, I think the result would be as previous or as before, and if it is 23.4, I think it should print normal. And if it is 43.4, it should print the default or execute the default block over here. So you should actually prefer the switch statement whenever you have this situation, or whenever you have a nested if else if block, just to make the code concise and more readable. So before I finish this video, I want to talk about switch statement a little more, because from Dart SDK version 3, there are some other versions of switch statement, what we called as switch expressions. That means from switch, if we use switch expression, we can actually return something from this switch, because this switch statement or from this switch or this block, we don't return anything. But if we use switch expression, we can actually return something from the case. From each case, we can actually return something from here, and then the return value can be stored in another variable. So this is actually called the switch expressions, and I think this is introduced in Dirt after or from Dirt SDK 3 or Dirt 3. So let me convert this switch statement to switch expression. Let me just keep it, and if I want to implement switch expression, so first of all, let me define a variable, for example, final status, and we will get the status from a switch expression. And the switch expression will be, you have to once again you have to write switch, and you have to provide the value that will compare. Also, we have to provide the bracket, that means the body over here. So from at this point, this is looking just like this one, but for a switch expression, we don't define cases, so we cannot use case keyword inside a switch expression. Instead, we will just use the conditions or this variables or these conditions actually with the logical operators and the value. So instead of switch, we'll simply say less than 10, and then instead of a semicolon, there should be a fat arrow like that. Okay, so this is equal and the greater the sign, and now we have to return something from here. And the switch expression, from the switch expression, we have to return just one thing that should not be a multi-line statement over here or expression. So from here, we will simply return very hot, because if the temperature is less than 10, sorry, this will be very cold, pardon me. Okay, so now you have to provide a comma, and then now let's go to the next expression. The next expression will be simply use this greater than and equals 10 and less than and equals 18, and then if this is the condition, if this is the situation, if it is true, then from here returns simply cold. And let me just copy this line and paste it once and twice, and this will be 19 to 24, and this will be 25 to 30. And let me just change this cold, this should be normal, this should be hot. And now what about the default? So we cannot use the default keyword as well, and for the default we just have to use this underscore, that's it. And then from here just use this fat arrow, that means that thing over here, and from here return whatever we need to return for the default value. That means very, very hot. Okay, so now we have to provide a semicolon after this, because this is an expression. This is like a structure or the closure, but this is actually an expression, and that's why we need to provide a semicolon after that expression. And now you see clearly that we get a status. That means we get a string either from this line, from this line, this line, this line, or the last line. And now all we have to do is we have to print this status. Okay, so if I remove this switch statement as well, and now if I run this application based on this value, we should see very hot as well. So very hot. Let me change the value from 13.4, and this should be cold. Okay, so now that you have learned many variants of switch, We have the switch statement, we have the switch expression. Feel free to use or consider the case where you should use switch statement or where you should use the switch expression. It entirely depends on the situation or the program we are writing, the data we have. So I think it is more concise and it requires less code because I don't need to provide any case and break keywords or default keywords. So this is much concise and very clean. So whenever we get a chance, we should use this switch expression. And if you think that we don't need to return anything from switch, just a switch statement like a structure, and then you are always have the privilege to use the old switch statement.